Josh Heupel versus Brian Kelly. Who's better schematically? And it's brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Honolulu. I mean, no contacts, no glasses as well, because I had the LASIK surgery and it is fantastic. Local doctors that care about you, cataracts as well. And they've got the individual vision centers for your regular checkup. So you got Josh Heupel versus Brian Kelly. Who's better schematically? Now, if you can define, as we did this morning at the 12:45 a.m. production meeting, if you can define what you mean schematically, do you mean across the board? Do you mean just on offense? You mean offense, defense, special teams? I'm assuming you don't mean putting together a program, which people could argue I've got a scheme of a method for putting together a program, but define what you mean by schematically.
Yeah, I was thinking specifically offense since they both come from an offensive background. And I'm saying one game for your life, who do you trust to put together a better offensive game plan?
One game for your life. So I'm entering the SEC championship game, and I've got Brian Kelly of LSU versus Tennessee. I'm not taking Josh Heupel because of what he would do that week, but I think overall his scheme is significantly better. So I would take him not based off game planning, which makes it sound like that. And I'm not knocking him on game planning either. I thought he had a great game plan versus Clemson that took advantage of what Joe Milton III did the best. I'm taking Josh Heupel because the overall scheme. So in other words, two supermodels scheduled to attend an event. If one's dress isn't quite as nice as the other, if Brian Kelly outdoes it on dresses, then fine, he gets that. But as a whole, it's Cindy Crawford versus Caleb Giroux.
Caleb Giroux will love this. He's from Louisiana. So I guess where you're going, you've educated me on this. What you're saying is Josh Heupel, in this way, this is what makes him similar to Spurrier, because you felt Spurrier had the better scheme in the 90s, but you're not sure he would have been the best game planning week to week.
That is exactly correct. Yeah, I think Josh Heupel is Steve Spurrier redone without the smart aleck tongue. I hate making comparisons that are so cut and dry like that because everybody's different, but I think he is that guy.
So I have to say I agree with you. I think, but I'm going to take a caveat. I think it depends. Josh Heupel's scheme, if they're both coaching NFL teams, I'd take Brian Kelly yesterday, today, tomorrow to run the NFL team over Josh Heupel every day of the week. I wouldn't even think about it. I think his offense translates better.
I would too, but why? Just because it's more fundamentally ground based?
Yeah, it's got more pro style elements.
Okay, but before you go too far down that road, let me play devil's advocate, even though I agree with you. Tennessee runs the football, right? We all know that by now. Okay, so are you oversimplifying just a little bit? Again, I agree with you. I'm playing devil's advocate. But are you oversimplifying just a little bit to say that Brian Kelly's offense is more fundamentally based than Josh Heupel's? Because Josh Heupel's offense does run the football.
I think it's the blocking schemes from the offensive line. So this is actually something I give Butch Jones credit for, and I think he got this from Brian Kelly, which is that Brian Kelly runs spread elements, but if you watch his offensive linemen, they're taught to block the way it would block in a pro-style offense. Heupel's offense, yes, he runs the football, but the blocking schemes are very much a spread offense blocking scheme, which is basically take a position, force your defender to that position, not maintain a block. You get what I'm saying? Like Heupel doesn't coach his players. And maybe Cooper Mays will kill us for saying this, but I don't think they're coached to maintain blocks in Heupel's system.
No, it's a leverage thing. Cooper has said that before, and that's why he feels like he's better off going against bigger guys than lighter, quicker guys. He'll tell you that Pitt was more challenging than Alabama, for instance, because it is a leverage game. He's very rarely blocking somebody by himself. No, I think there's something to that. I don't go that far down that road because then you get into Butch Jones territory, and they didn't have a hand on the ground. When I saw that, I was like, that was every bit as big of a red flag as Dave Clawson flipping offensive lines. And when I saw that, I mean, seriously, when I saw that Butch Jones didn't even have a guy in goal line with his hand on the ground, I was like, this is trouble. They don't even know how to put their hand on the ground in a 3-point stance. I mean, nobody's asking for a 4-point stance, but for the love of goodness, you're on the 2 and you're standing on 2 feet. So this is nowhere like that, but it is at the very least keeping defenses honest and a little bit more. So to me, it is every bit as fundamentally sound in the college game as anything that Brian Kelly does. I would absolutely take it. And I hate the fact that people say gimmicky and people on the message board think that's a bad thing. Listen, because of the loosey-goosey offensive rules in college, gimmicky should be a compliment. Can we just officially try to change that word from a negative connotation to a positive connotation? I'll take a little gimmicky. Look at what Mike Leach, rest his soul, was able to do, how Mummy was able to do at smaller schools. Yet, that is not Josh Heupel's offense. It may have a twinge of gimmicky, but it's still fundamentally based. That's what it is. And that's why I think Tennessee fans get rubbed the wrong way on the gimmick line, the G word. But the simple fact is, it is a little gimmicky, but most offenses are, even if we want to go back to the wing T, but it's fundamentally sound. So I think Tennessee's got a great thing going.
Offenses are gimmicky until everybody does it, and then they're standard. The single wing that Neyland adopted in 1926 was gimmicky. In 1956, it was outdated, and Tennessee was staying committed to it. And they were like, the T formation, the T formation is just too fashionable, and it's going to go away. And then Tennessee adopted it with Doug Dickey, even though the T formation was the original formation before the single wing. So you're right. I'd like to quote. Have y'all ever seen the documentary on Elizabeth Holmes, the Theranos woman who created like fake blood work for people and went to prison over it?
No, I have not seen anything about her.
It's a great documentary. She is a fraud and she belongs in prison, but she had a great quote one time, even though she belongs in prison, which is that first they think you're crazy, then they fight you, then you change the world. That's how offenses work in football. First they think you're crazy, then they fight it, and then everybody's running your offense.
No, I completely agree. When I watch Brian Kelly's offense, pro style is too strong of a word, but I see an offense that is more pro style based, but has little tweaks in it to make it more adept at the college game. Whereas when I look at Josh Heupel's offense, I see a college offense with some pro style approaches, which is have the ability to run the football. I think they're on not completely opposite ends of the spectrum, but opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of the way they approach the offensive game.
Yes, when we see Josh Heupel, we see a scheme. We see, okay, I don't like to use him because you're right, he never adapted, but we see a Mike Leach. Josh Heupel will adapt, so it's not like he's like Mike Leach, but we see it's more scheme-based. You're right. When you see Brian Kelly, you see it's year-to-year, game-to-game base. He adapts his offense to his personnel, and he knows how to. I guess one of the good comparisons would actually be David Cutcliffe, who I thought was a master at adapting his offense based on the personnel he had year to year. And he ran a standard pro style. Brian Kelly is more creative than Cutcliffe, but just that principle that they adapt their offenses, because Cutcliffe went. I will never forget when he just brought up the no huddle in 2007 out of the blue. He had never run it his whole career, but he was like, I got a senior quarterback and a great offensive line that's veteran. I'm going to run the no huddle. And it worked.
Mr. Jones says innovative sounds better. It does. And those two words, gimmicky and innovative, are probably closer together in definition than you might think. Gimmicky to me is what the Ravens ran the first 2 years in Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar Jackson can throw now, and that was the idea that they were going to develop him into a thrower. So it sounds like an insult now. But Mike Vick at Va Tech, those were gimmicky. Those were taking advantage of very elite running quarterbacks. I don't think that Tennessee is trying to make a 12th man essentially on the field, which is what you're doing. And when you run a guy around a lot at quarterback, you're trying to create. He's not only a quarterback, but he's a potential running back. That's what you're trying to do, is create a 12th man versus the 11 on defense. But I think those two are examples of gimmicky, and you can probably come up with others, Caleb, that was Mike Vick gimmicky because he was special? Yeah, I mean, you'd be stupid not to do something gimmicky with him. Was Lamar Jackson a good enough thrower to not be gimmicky very early in his career? No. So they did that with him to some extent with Jalen Hurts. Now, I think it both developed as throwers. So I'm not painting this broad brush, Caleb, but those to me are gimmicky.
See, I didn't think Mike Vick was gimmicky at Virginia Tech, though. What Virginia Tech did to me, what Frank Beamer did, was similar to what I felt Bobby Bowden did with Charlie Ward, which is I don't think they had a scheme. I think they just had a very dynamic athlete at quarterback, and they basically were like, snap the ball and make something happen.
Yeah, but see that. No, I agree. And Randall Cunningham in the early '90s with the Eagles was the same way. The defense is going to make plays, go out there and scramble around and make something happen 5 times, and Eagles win the game, right? That to me is gimmicky, because when you lose the Vic, you lose even college or pro, and you lose Randall Cunningham, your offense completely stops. If Tennessee this year loses Joe Milton III, Nico's going to step in, and the offense isn't going to completely stop. Maybe just you and I workshopping this thing have defined what's gimmicky and what's not.
That's true. What's innovative versus gimmicky? That's a fair point. So, but then I'm like, okay, Gus Malzahn was innovative, but if Auburn loses Cam Newton in 2010, the offense still stops. You're not going to replace Cam Newton.
Yeah, that is just a special sort of player that almost goes into a different category, almost like Mike Vick in Atlanta. I mean, that almost went, and I saw him play firsthand. I was like, this guy's done stuff that I've just never seen personally. I don't like him as a person. By the way, they have a down the road at the Dave & Buster's, they have a place where you can bid on a Mike Vick helmet. And I just, I filled it out as emailed Dave at aspaca.com. So I went down that road of yes, I had not forgot that he abused animals. Is it too soon, too long?
No, I'm one of those people. I do believe it's the biblical Saul to Paul story, and I believe in redemption. But there are some things it's like the level people. I don't think people understand the level of animal abuse that went on in the dogfighting ring. I mean, they were like electrocuting and drowning dogs after they lost. It was just bad.
There's a specific player that we've chosen not to work with because of things I know about his background, a former Tennessee player. So it's not just where I am. I mean, there's certain things that I can't get beyond. But yeah, I think if you have a Vic or you have a Cam Newton, you take advantage of them. And then when they're gone, you're not going to be able to take advantage of them anymore. So you better have something good to go. So what happened in those particular cases with Frank Beamer? What happened with Gus Malzahn? You had coaches that couldn't continue that offensive success without those very special players. I think the question you have to ask yourself is, how in the world did they get those players in the first place? And I would say kudos to both of them for adapting an offense to do things that were special. But still, I look at both of those situations, and those were gimmicky because you had a guy that was so special.
Which is where that was different from, for instance, Tom Osborne. Tommy Frazier was the best quarterback to run that offense. But guess what? When Tommy Frazier graduated, Scott Frost came in and he won another national title.
He was just darn fine, wasn't he?
Yep, he was
just fine.
And John Chambers could not figure out how to stop him on green. So
yeah, and I don't think Tennessee will be gimmicky if you factor in that they will have a quarterback ready to play. Gimmicky to me is just relying completely on one guy's ability. Or would you call the triple option back in the day like Georgia Tech ran and drove people crazy in the 90s and 2000s? Is that gimmicky?
To me, that was gimmicky only in the sense of, again, here's where the line comes into play. And this may be where Heupel's different from Mike Leach. It's gimmicky if you don't adjust. And the Georgia Tech triple option, Paul Johnson took advantage of the fact that nobody in the ACC was running the triple option. So it's hard to prepare for them that 1 week. I'll give you an example. We'll go to basketball. No one likes to hear this. Bruce Pearl's success at Tennessee was because of a gimmicky system he ran when he first took over. Like, do you know how pressing for 40 minutes in college basketball, that nobody in the SEC was prepared for that. And it was fun to watch.
Yeah, but Arkansas did the same thing. So is that
was
gimmicky or is that aggressive?
That was gimmicky. What Nolan Richardson did was gimmicky. And he was a great coach. That doesn't mean he's not a good coach, but it was gimmicky. Bruce Pearl, remember, when Bruce Pearl's own recruits came in, he didn't have the same level of success that he had with Buzz Peterson's recruits. Not because Buzz Peterson's recruits were better, but I think the SEC kind of caught up a little bit with what he was doing, which was just like the SEC caught up with Steve Spurrier, by the way, in the late 90s. He won one SEC title his last 6 years after winning 5 in his first 6 years. And I think that's what happened with Pearl. Pearl's still a great coach, succeeding at Auburn. He's innovative as well as gimmicky because he adjusts to he's able to adjust with this system, but his commitment is still to flex offense and press and score in transition. And that's what he lives and dies by. He swears by it.